It's the Greg X Volz Radio Special. Hi, this is Jon Rivers. In the next few minutes, we'll meet the man behind those riveting power vocals that took Petra all the way to the top. The same ones that are taking Greg X Volz to the top as a solo artist.
Petra's thing really all started in '82 with the Coloring Song. And the Coloring Song was a song that came out of a group called E-Band, which was one of the first Jesus rock or Christian rock groups in the Midwest in 1970.
Greg X Volz is now on his own with a brand new solo album on Myrrh Records called The River is Rising. It was the E-Band that really got things started for Greg. After forming a rock band in high school, Greg enrolled in Illinois State University and with 4 other guys formed Gideon's Bible. The band, a cut above most Midwest bands, released their first single in 1969 called Love is the Answer. It rose on the local charts, giving the group the opportunity to perform as the cover act for Chicago, Janis Joplin, B.B. King, and many others. In 1970, Greg moved to Indianapolis, where E-Band was formed. Within 2 weeks of their inception, their musical direction took a radical turn.
About a 55-year-old man preached the gospel to us. The whole band was saved, and we became a Jesus rock band overnight, literally. Because we asked him, what are we going to do? We're rock musicians. He says, I believe you ought to play Jesus rock. And that term hadn't even been invented then. He said, well, what do you mean? Take your music and tell people, young people, about Jesus with your music. And we literally, overnight, became a Jesus rock band and turned Indianapolis upside down for about 2 years.
In 1972, Greg X Volz was asked to sing at Adam's Apple, a Christian coffee house in Fort Wayne. Ironically, the band that opened for him was the infant Petra, the band that 6 years later he joined to lead to their famed reputation as the #1 Christian rock band worldwide. Greg explains his work with Petra proved to be a training ground for his first solo work.
I had planned on doing a solo record in 1975, and I had been working with Mike Schmitz for about a year at that point. Mike, to a lot of people that are listening, is my best friend of 14 years, and we had purposed to work together before I had ever joined Petra. And I had the studio time booked. I had talked to Phil Kagi about guitars. I'd gone through the whole ritual to set it up, and the doors closed, and it just was not time. And the next thing that opened up was an invitation to sing with REO, and then right after that, an invitation to sing with Petra, of which the Petra invitation I accepted. And from '77 until 1986, I spent those years really working exclusively with that group. And Mike and I had continued to work together on projects in the studio and doing commercials and writing this and that, playing songs for different people's albums. And I produced some local stuff and some test stuff. But primarily my work was with Petra. And, it got to the point where that he, was saying, well, are we ever going to do anything? First it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Are we ever going to do anything? And finally, 9 years later, here we are with The River is Rising. And I learned invaluable lessons from touring with Petra and being really a very wholeheartedly tied into that ministry for a number of years. And they'll continue to be out there and do what they do and do it well. And my thing had come to the point where that I had the decision to make of continuing on with Petra or going back and fulfilling the commitment that I knew that I needed to keep with Mike. I knew that the Lord wanted me to do that, and it was a point of my record contract was up. I was free, completely legally free all the way around. And it was kind of like, well, it's either now or never. And so I said, well, let's do it. We're just the guys to do it. And it was a step of faith, a big step of faith, because I really did not want to leave Petra. And I get letters from people saying, I'm really mad at you. Why you just ruined this group, and you're leaving and all that. And then they would give me this big hard talk, and then at the end of the letter say, and by the way, when you're going to be in our area, please let me know, or something. But people they didn't accept it very well at first, but I don't think there's any problem there. I think people have to realize now there are going to be two groups out there doing what one was doing before. I mean, I enjoyed the years I had with Petra, but this new music is just more, I should say this music is closer to my heart. Mostly because I co-wrote 4 of the songs. The other songs were written by Mike Schmitz, who, being my best friend, writes from my perspective. And he and I have shared almost identically the same experiences in the last 12 or 14 years as far as just our growth in the Lord and just things that go on in life. And it's been very advantageous to me being able to sing the way he writes because he understands what I am. And he writes like, Man Like You is written for me specifically. He said, I'm writing this song from your heart. And I said, thank you very much.
Here I sit just like a gloomy little boy, staring down at all my broken toys. There's no playmates today, cause it's pouring rain. There's something missing that the good times didn't bring, a hidden verse that I don't know how to sing. No, I don't know what to call it, but I want it all the same. Ooh, how the pulse of life cries out to me. Ooh, I even hear it when I sleep. Yeah. But things are not always what they seem, and how I hope it's more than a dream that keeps alive this hope inside me. I wanna be a man like you, but my heart won't face the task. I wanna be a man like you, but I tremble when I ask. Oh, the light that shines in darkness, oh, that's good and true. Take me from myself and make me new. 'Cause I wanna be a man like you. I hear their voices, see their faces as they smile. They say we'll be together in a little while. And by the folly of the fool and by the wisdom of a wise man, ooh, all the crystal visions that I long to see. Ooh, and I just wanna be your friend. Yeah. But things are not always what they seem. If I could only see what they mean. But what I need is to be still. Oh no, I wanna be a man like you, but my heart won't face the task. I wanna be a man like you, and I tell them when I ask. Oh, the light that shines in darkness, oh, it's good and true. Take me from myself and make me new. I wanna be a man like you, but my heart won't face the task. I wanna be a man like you, but I tremble when I ask. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down, but I remember what I found.
Greg X Volz, and Man Like You from his first solo effort on Myrrh Records, The River is Rising. The Lord didn't let Greg go into solo work without providing. Greg's band, called Pieces of Eight, came together in a miraculous way.
People just literally came up to my front door and knocked on my front door and said, "I'm here, the Lord sent me. What are we going to do?" I mean, when somebody like Joe English does that to you, you go, "What?" You know, "No, the Lord sent me. I'm here. What do you want me to do? I'm here to work with you, I'm here to serve you." And here's a man that gave up, 5 years of his own career to be a part of a group called Pieces of Eight, or whatever you want to call it, and to go on the road with me and tour with me. It just worked out. It was the way this whole album came together in a very unique and special way. And I did not have to go out and beat my head, against the wall trying to find musicians. They literally just walked in my house.
Greg X Volt's music communicates. It fills a need for a generation searching for truth.
Our purpose has been for all these years was to provide an alternative for our kids and for the society that they wouldn't have to listen to a lot of the stuff, the really bad, what I call schlock music that's out there, so that when they talked to their non-Christian friends, they could say, "Here, listen to this." And when they listened to it, they wouldn't go hide under a rock somewhere. And that is what we're trying to do today. We're trying to provide the best possible music that we can. And I think God demands that from us. I think that He wants us to be excellent in what we do. Excel in your gift.
And excel, Greg X Volz does. The song Hold On to the Fire from the new album is an example of how Greg's music provides positive encouragement.
I would say if there's anything I could say to people today, that is to hold on to the fire that's within you. Hold on to that fire that God's placed in you to do His will, to be what He's called you to be, because He's the one that's going to equip you to do that. And that if we try to do it in our own strength, we'll fail every time. But as we rely on the Spirit within us, and He will direct us and guide us in the way we're supposed to go. And that fire will not go out. It's there to stay.
You're listening to the Greg X Volz Radio Special. We'll be right back. We're back with the Greg X Volz Radio Special. I'm Jon Rivers. Greg's solo effort was co-produced by Jonathan David Brown. You'll find another song on the album with an interesting background.
We would a lot of times just go downstairs to my rec room where my equipment is and sit down at the piano and just start singing and hollering and, carrying on as musicians do certain times of the year when the wind's in the right direction. And he started playing something and I just started singing and we started singing, "Lead me to still waters.
Lead me to still waters. Lead me further still. Oh, lead me to still waters. Lead me in your way. Oh, lead me to still waters. Lead me to still waters. To the waters that never will run dry. Never will run dry.
That song obviously talks about the peace of God. Still waters is, I think, a stillness and a calmness is something that we're all looking for in our relationship with God, with it when we're flustered by the day-to-day events, that there's a place we can go, a hiding place, so to speak, where we can get away, be with the Lord.
Greg X Volz, a very talented man. Greg has a song on his album, The River is Rising, that captures the essence of a Psalm of David. Greg tells the meaning behind All I Can Do.
It says that when you're surrounded, when your enemies come in, when you fail, when you fall on your face, where is your strength anyway? Because when you realize that your strength is in God and not in your own abilities, then you have to give glory to God. You have to sing to the Lord and give voice your praise to Him.
I am surrounded, there's no way out, I must fight a nasty situation on the horizon, reinforcements coming in sight to face the confrontation. And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I know by His power He will give me that rest which passes understanding. All I have to do for Him to put me through, stand on the word and He'll fight the battle. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do. Without a vision, I would fade away in the night. He knows the way I'm going. My victory will come when I rely on His might. It is His love He's showing. He will hold up His name. He will not let it fall. No matter who's against Him, if we are found in His will, we will conquer it all and see the restoration. All we have to do is keep our hearts true, stand on the word and He'll win the battle. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do. Hey. And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I know by His power He will give me the rest, that perfect rest. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do is praise Him. Praise Him again. All I can do.
Greg X Volz, All I Can Do, from his album The River is Rising. Greg's involvement with reaching young people goes beyond his musical outreach. Greg has been involved with drug abuse and rehabilitation programs and suicide prevention, which is a major problem in teenage circles. He's been involved on a street level.
There are organizations in cities that we contact and work with, and I'd like to work with organizations that are actually public service organizations that cover the whole community. And in some cases, those organizations are run by Christian people. In some cases, they are not. But the fact is, kids need a place where they can go and counsel and talk to people, and many times they need to do it outside of their peer group and outside of the church, because many times the church ostracizes people for having problems. That's not fair. And that's why I believe that Christians today are hiding their sin. I believe they hide their sins, and they're afraid to confess their faults one to another because people ostracize them for having problems. And so then 30 years down the road, all of a sudden something comes to light, or some big blow-up comes and a church splits, and they go, oh, this is terrible, and they cover it up or do whatever. And I mean, it's pretty sickening, but that is a big problem. Now, when you go to an outside organization, you can, in confidence, talk to people that don't know you. And it's a lot better sometimes to counsel with someone that has no idea who you are, because then you can shoot straight from the hip, and you can get it off your chest. That really is the truth. And I think we've all been, I know I have been subject to that. I was with a real tight group in Missouri for about 8 years. And it was just very hard to be myself because of not being their standards. Or it's really, that goes back to a cultural thing too, because, you know, if your heart doesn't condemn you, the scripture says, who can? And God challenges us to change according to how he deals with us, not according to what someone says here. This is the list of rules. Because what can be right for one person can be wrong for another. And there's a little track out. It's called Others May, You Cannot. And it has to do with God's hand of discipline on you. And the closer you get into the Spirit and the closer you get to the Lord, there seems to be more restrictions many times in our walk, where that people that are young in the Lord have more of a freedom. And even then, you know, that's not a guarantee that everything's going to be okay. You're always going to have the ups and downs. But, you know, as the man said in the songs, you know, sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. But I think it was that song, Man Like You, wasn't it? X Volz. The ministry, reaching others for Christ with the gifts he gives us. And the gift for Greg X Volz is his music. His life has been molded by God's hands into this solo effort. The River is Rising, the album from Myrrh Records. I'm Jon Rivers, and you've been listening to the Greg X Volz Radio Special.